Starting just with some house rules to ensure a smooth flowing session today. First of all, please keep an eye on the chat box. Make sure not to flood it with spam so that you can catch important announcements and links on how you can engage with us via slido.com. You can see the chat box for the code to join this session. Have your mobile phones on standby and scan the QR codes on the slides so that you can see career opportunities in supply chain, procurement, technical and production across all Nestlé markets around the globe. Okay, so great. So let's begin today's session then. I'd like to introduce you to myself. My name is Katie Billington. I'm the head of supply chain for nutrition for Asia, Oceania and Africa. I've worked in supply chain for almost 20 years, most of which has been with Nestlé and almost all of which has been in planning. So I'm very excited to learn more from what Luca's going to share with us today. And with that, I'd like to introduce you today to our inspiring keynote speaker, Luca, who is the Zone Head of Supply Chain and Business Services for Nestlé Asia, Oceania and Africa. Luca is responsible for supply chain, IT and other business services for this zone, with a turnover of 20.7 billion Swiss francs, 92 countries, 10 main business categories and 80 distribution centres. So I'm very excited to learn from Luca today about how a digitally connected supply network can enable agility and deliver on the expectations of our customers and consumers. With that, Luca, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Katie, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really excited to share these experiences with you. And as Katie said, she looked forward to learn from me, but I'm also looking forward to learn from her. She has been working in advanced supply planning for many years, and I regard her as one of our key experts in Nestlé. So my name is Luca. This year marks my 25th year's anniversary with the company. I worked across Europe, Asia Pacific, and South Asia. And most of my career has been in supply chain management, partially in procurement, and in project management and sales. So we have a rich agenda to share with you. So Katie, let's start with the first questions.
Okay, so Luca, I think supply chain has obviously faced a lot of volatility in the past 2 years. We know that everyone's become more familiar with supply chain, and we've seen more than ever how important it is for us to be agile in our response. How do you think the digital has helped us through this period?
Thank you, Katie. This is a very relevant question considering what we went through in the last 3 years. First of all, maybe you're using in this question a very important word for me. The word is agility. And maybe just to be on the same page and understanding what is agility for me. Agility somehow is flexibility with speed. What do we mean with this? Is our ability to respond quickly to any shock that we have either in demand or in supply. And what happened during the COVID crisis, that at the same time, we had both shocks. We had shocks in demand, shocks in supply, and happening in every geography we operate. So in the past, we used to manage shocks, either in demand or supply, in limited geography. So what made the COVID unique, that these two shocks happen at the same time everywhere. And therefore, really, how digital helped us. And maybe if you can imagine for a moment a value chain or supply network, and we may start upstream thinking how this helped us in sourcing, procurement. Digital was a key enabler because it helped us to map our suppliers. So, for example, I remember at the very beginning, in January 2020, when the crisis started in China, the first question was, for our zone, how much do we, where are our suppliers in China? What are our risks in this geography? And thanks to digital, we were able to map the physical location of the suppliers, link with the ports, and understanding the risk. When the crisis was progressing, the use of digital was very important on the ocean freight side, because in our zone, we rely a lot on intermarket movements. So we rely a lot on production, a lot on supplies that are located in different countries. And therefore, for us, it was very important to understand how the ports are operating, the lead times, and then when the product were on a ship, tracking the ship, and using predictive analytics, we could estimate the lead time of when the ship would arrive, so we could plan production. And then with the machine learning, basically, it was straightforward to understand a bit, okay, in the past, something that is coming from US to Asia would take let's say 6 weeks. Now it's taking 12 weeks or 15 weeks. So that was then embedded in our planning lead time and help us to plan for ensuring availability. So upstream, I would mention these two examples: understanding, mapping the geotag location of the supplier, and the second one was really the ocean track and trace piece of the containers. If we go a little bit downstream, and let's start to talk about planning, Katie. It was very fascinating when one of my team members wanted to help our out-of-home business, so the business that serve things like restaurants, hotel, offices, because at that time you remember that everything was closed and the opening was in patches, depending by market, even by town to a certain extent. So what the team came out with was the idea to use the Google mobility data to understand where people were moving, and based on that we could estimate when a restaurant and hotel was opening, when people would start to go to certain area, and this helped us to improve our demand planning, because movements means things are reopening, so we could plan demand, we could plan production and start moving goods to our route market. A second example is the use of demand plan analytics to understand how to link, let's say, the movement again with the demand. So during COVID, for example, some of our product, and I give you an example, which is product for baking, start to have a massive jump in demand. Same for coffee. So these two categories experience high growth, and there was a linkage, of course, with the quarantine. So what happened that, again, we were linking and making a statistical model to link the quarantine with the consumption of coffee or bakery product. Now, it was not perfect, and we learned on the way. We made a lot of mistakes when the modeling was done. We were not ready for it. But just to give you a bit of feeling on how, using the right demand analytics model, we can assure better product availability in order to win market shares. The last example is downstream. It's around logistics. This was a bit by chance, but in some markets, we accelerate our journey into logistic automation. So what does it mean? That instead of using humans to drive forklift and to pick product, we use machines. And this was in a way a blessing, because in these markets, we didn't have any problem with the productivity. So, machine don't get sick, don't take break, don't need to travel to be in the distribution center, always there 24/7. So we had the opportunity to leverage automation for availability. And the second example is a bit a mirror of what I explained on containers, on ocean freight. We did the same for domestic transport. So we had track and trace tool that help us to understand where are the trucks, when they're going to come to the warehouse for picking, and we could, on the other side, tell the customer when they could expect product. So track and trace downstream and upstream. These are some examples. Of course, in every market, you mentioned we have a quite large geography in our zone. I'm sure I'm forgetting something, but this is just some highlights that are most common across all the geography.
Okay, thank you, Luca. I mean, listening to that, it brings back a lot of memories of what we went through over the last 2 years. And it's nice to hear the way that you describe that about flexibility with speed at the beginning. I think it's very in line with what we needed to do. Linking with that, what kind of changes do you think that we've seen during this time in the behaviors and the expectations of our customers and consumers?
Yeah, the consumer and customers requirement over the last 5 years has changed quite significantly, and this is not only related to COVID. I mean, in general, consumer and customer are becoming more sophisticated, and if I can use probably one word, is around again, agility and customization. So customer wants agility, so want us to be able to respond quickly to demand variation, for example. They don't mind, they don't care a lot about our supply shocks. They care more about the demand shocks. So that supplies a bit our business to make sure that we are ready. But no, they want us to be ready to respond to demand volatility. They want us to be ready to customize everything. Customize means not only product, but also promotions, customize packaging, and similarly for consumer. Consumer want personalization, customization. We need to be agile to have different way of delivering products to the market. It can be direct to consumer, it can be direct to store if needed, can be direct to distribution center, can be X factory. So it's this agility that go into the entire value chain. Also, of course, consumers are asking more and more innovation of our product. And I see this a bit changing, if you want, moving in the next 2 years, because as you know, the world is experiencing inflation, and inflation is going at faster speed than how the salaries will be adjusted. So clearly, consumers will face choices, and what they will do, they will look for value. Value for me is benefits. So what I'm going to get with the product or the service compared to the cost. That's the value. So I have a price, let's say. So I have certain benefits and there is a price to pay. So in that equation that we need to make it right. So they want good, affordable price and high benefits. So it's back to us how we can do this.
Okay, and look, we've already heard a little bit today about the importance of our planning and how that's connected across the value chain. You gave some examples earlier. What kind of changes do you anticipate we're going to see in our tools and digital functionality that will support that?
This is a fascinating area, and if you ask me, we talk a lot about digital, not only Nestlé, I mean, in all the industries. And if I just take supply chain management, the area of demand supply planning is probably the area where the digital application and tools are the most complex, but are the one that will deliver the highest benefits. Because I always say, if you have the right demand, you will have most likely the right supply plan, and then the rest will flow downstream, hopefully. But if we start wrong with the demand, then it will be very difficult downstream to make it right for the downstream part of the network. It will be extremely important. So it will be extremely important to get the right tool for demand supply planning, and this tool will change the way we work. What we expect in terms of changes that instead of doing planning, we will make choices depending on the best optimized scenario that the tool is giving to us. So the changes will be the possibility to simulate scenario. This is number one, that today we can do, but with limitation. The second change will be that instead of refreshing plan on weekly basis, or in some cases monthly basis, we can do concurrently, daily, instantly. So the plan can be refreshed on daily basis, depending on what's happening in the trade. So demand signal will trigger changes in the way we plan. And I think the third change will be related to people. So to the type of skills capability that we will require to run a demand and supply planning organization. So for me, these are the three main changes. So moving from doing the plan to manage exception, a scenario. The second will be really from weekly to daily. And the third will be skills and capability of people.
Okay. And, you know, apart from the tools, I mean, you've mentioned that there are other elements as well that we need to think about. How do you foresee that the organization of planning will need to evolve in order to fully leverage that?
Yeah, traditionally, you know, Nestlé is traditionally a decentralized organization, especially in our zone. So we have a planning organization that are at market base, and this makes a lot of sense with the traditional way of doing planning. So what I can foresee, and I don't know how we're going to do it, and we're in the process of thinking on this, a certain activity could be done in the center of competence, center of excellence, where, for example, statistical forecasting or demand analytics could be supported by specialists that are they're mastering the system and will be able to service the market. while clearly the hardcore business demand planning will remain in the market, because you need to be connected with sales, with the brand managers, to understand the reality of the brand on the ground, the type of promotion. Because you see, Zone AOA is very diversified, and we have markets where only a few markets where the modern trade is very high. Majority of the markets we have a mix of modern and traditional or semi-modern that require a lot, where we have a lot of fragmentation, so a lot of inputs on promotion, on geography. For example, you take a market like India, you cannot really do a plan on nation basis, because what you sell in the east is different what you sell in the north than what you sell in the south. So clearly there you really need to have regional demand plans. So this is the way I see it. We can leverage opportunity with specialized role, some of them, but clearly a lot of things, the main core planning need to remain in the markets. Maybe here you can also share your experience or how you see it, because you have been leading planning teams for many years in the market. So it would be good. I would be interested to know a bit how you see this.
Yeah, I mean, thank you, Luca, because I think you're right. I mean, I've seen, and I've been able to work in different markets where, in different countries, sometimes where the whole operation is from one office, and sometimes where that operation is across different geographies and regions, as Luca just mentioned. And I think, I think that there are opportunities sometimes to leverage capability. I think that's what's quite important. And when we see things that require specific skills, I mean, you just mentioned there about analytics, for example, where we need to enhance and encourage certain skills. There can be a benefit as well to not only having those in a hub from a service perspective to be able to provide that service to the market, but from developing that really enhanced capability by having a group of people together, really, that can build together, that can learn from each other. And that's what helps us to kind of deliver that strength. But I think also by giving that as a service to the teams that are still within the market doing the local operation, it allows them to focus on what really matters, right? So they can really spend their time on what's happening much closer to where the customer is, and really what's going to add value there. So yeah, I understand exactly what you're saying there. Okay. All right. And look, I mean, we've talked about, you shared quite a lot of potential exciting changes that are going to come in planning. And I suppose you've touched already a little bit on skill set earlier on. But how do you see that the planners of today are going to need to be different tomorrow? Where do you see that evolving?
Yeah, this is an excellent question, because the profile of the planners and the skills and capability required will be different of today and yesterday. In the past, what do we expect from a planner, a supply planner, or a material requirement planner, or a distribution requirement planner in a DC or in a factory? What we require is a person that is very good with very good analytic skills. He feels numbers, he can master the plan. So we expect he or she able to make plans, to take the inputs, work on, I would say, medium sophisticated tools, sometimes in Excel spreadsheets, and to make a plan. Tomorrow, this will not be required anymore. Why? Because the tool that we are implementing, and we started already in Thailand, and we are rolling out this year in South Asia region, so in India and in Japan, this tool will make the plan. So we don't need people to make plan anymore. So what do we need? We need people that are able to assess option that the tool will provide. So people that have great problem-solving skills, people that are able to see what are the consequences on the business of doing scenario A or scenario B. People that are great communicator, that are able to communicate to the business, to the factory if needed, to the senior leader, why we need to optimize scenario A instead of scenario B. And also people that can be creative and bring solution. And I able also to understand when the system went wrong, because that happened, and you will happen. If you have the wrong configuration or there is wrong data, of course the system will not see this. So you need people that have also good, I would say, judgment on the results that are coming out of the plan. And an example is that you can optimize cost, you can optimize service for certain channel, or service for a specific customer, and there are different consequences in your top line and your bottom line. So the system may give you 3 scenarios, optimizing 3 different things, and then it will be the judgment call of the planner to say, I go for this or for that. And that, of course, is very different than say, this is my demand, this is my stock over, these are the line standard, so what do I need to produce in the next 3 weeks? It's a very different game, I would say, and we need to be ready for that.
Okay, so thanks, Luca. So look, I mean, like you've mentioned, I mean, it's critical for planning to understand and connect with so many different functions to really make the strongest impact. How do you think that digital can help to maximize that cross-functional connection?
Yeah, this is again very interesting to think on how we are looking at the entire supply network and how the different digital pieces are connected to each other. Maybe I can start with the buzzword, which is this control tower. You know, you can hear this all forum, and it's a frequently asked question: what do you see as a control tower? What are the benefits? And here I think there are 2 extremes, and I'm trying to give you some examples so we understand each other. One extreme is that is a control tower is like something that stay above like our operation and map every transaction, every data that happen in our value chain in the network. Now, so every truck, every production, etc., etc. I'm not a big fan of this big screen that sometimes you see some consultants show you of everything happening in your supply chain. You can see everything. Well, I'm not a big fan because the question is what we're going to do with all the data. How we're going to use it. So it's, yeah, you can tell me every single transaction at that level, but then, okay, what is the value for improving our availability and or reducing cost in our supply network? So we like to see more, or personally I like to see more as application of use cases. So, I mean, to me, a control tower that go end to end is something that can highlight key exception in our supply network. And once I have an exception, then, okay, how I'm going to deal with it? Examples. If I know that you remember I mentioned about this track and trace on the ocean freight. So if let's say we know that a certain ship that was supposed to arrive in 1 week time or in 3 weeks time in Asia and left the US will not arrive on time because of whatever disruption is happening in the ocean world. The question is, okay, so what? I need to know in the system, the control tower need to be smart enough to tell me 3 weeks delay. I don't even need to tell Luca because we have enough safety stock of that ingredient. So fine, no big deal. But if that will disrupt production because we already use more than what we plan, etc., then is where the alert need to come. So any shipping delay that is disrupting production or service that need to be highlighted so the planner can make decision on what to do. You know, so do I change recipe? Do I change scheduling? Do I prioritize another product? Whatever. So I think that is what I say an intelligent control tower that is based on use cases and let people make decision on either production or delivery, etc. It's not something that show you on the screen everything happening in your value chain. So it has to be very specific to use cases. Otherwise, to me, there is little value. And how we can maximize, if I give another example downstream, it's the way we capture demand signal. So what I mean is, if we know that certain product have been sold to consumer, or in case we use distributor has been sold to the trade, how we capture that signal, compare with our assumption, and then trigger a replenishment to the trade, and that replenishment trigger a production, and that production trigger a replenishment from our supply. So it's the way how we can connect from the trade and the consumer signal backwards to the entire network, or what we need to adjust in our demand, in our production, in our replenishment. That to me is the most fascinating piece. It sounds theoretically very intuitive and straightforward. In practice, it's very difficult to do it. Because in practice, to capture first, not in every market, you're easily able to get the signal. There are some customers that don't want to share data, or they are not able to share data. Or when we have this data, the trade is in layers. So you may get the first layer data, but then you are missing second, third, and fourth layer. So the moment you have multi-layer, it's in complex market, it becomes very difficult then to implement this. But we can do it in pockets. As I said, I don't think there is a perfect model, but I'm sure there are opportunities moving forward to maximize this cross-functional connection.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Clear. And I think what you said about alerts and exceptions, I think, probably in the last couple of years in planning, we saw more and more exceptions, right? More exceptions than we ever had before. So the opportunity to prioritize that and, to know where we need to spend our time, where we can add the most value, I think is, it can add a huge amount of benefit overall. Okay. So look, just one last question from me, if I can, is that we hear about digital all the time, right? We hear a lot about emphasis of the tools, in terms of digital, but there's a big change management that comes with it. So my question is, do you think that we have the capability ready to make this change?
Yeah, I will give you my view on this, and then I think it will be again interesting that you share your view, because being in the markets for many years, you probably have the feel on the ground of the capability that we have in the different markets to drive this change. First of all, I think, Katie, today, if you look at all the research that you receive from consultant, all the conferences that are out there, I would say probably 90 or 80% is around the tools, which are the best tool to do to digitalize your demand supply planning, your analytics. Everyone is talking about the tool. To me, we need to rebalance this, because if I have, I use always this example being Italian. If you have a Ferrari, but you don't know how to a Ferrari operates, you don't know how to build what are the functionality of the Ferrari, etc. And then when the Ferrari doesn't work, you don't know what to do with it. Honestly, the value is not that great. So to me, the first piece is understanding the change management behind these tools. So the type of skills that we need at the beginning, actually, it goes beyond analytics and digital. It touches the heart of change management. So what makes, if today you are planning with an Excel spreadsheets, and tomorrow you want to implement another system like Blue Yonder or OM Partners, just to mention two, the most important skills actually is change management. What do I mean? What type of skill are behind this? First of all is to make it successful, you need in change management the top senior leader commitment to the change, visible. So they need to say that why implementing this tool, the system is important. So what are the business benefits? And they're talking about the CEO. So the CEO has to talk about it. The senior leadership team in the business heads, of course, the head of supply chain, the CFO of the company, the head of ID, everyone need to talk about it and show visible leadership. So this is number one. Number two, rule of the project manager. You need project managers to make all this change. And you need people that knows how to prioritize tasks, how to bottleneck problems, etc., etc. Three, in the team that is making this transition, you need to put your best people. Your best people, so your best demand supply planners, the people that know the principle, know the business, etc. And part of this rule of the best people is also you need to put them on full-time basis, because you say, okay, you have to manage the planning of this large coffee operation, but by the way, at the same time, you need to change from SAP into OM Partners. It's not going to work. The person can't do the two things at the same time, or will try to do an average job in both. So it's really, you take the best people, you dedicate to the project. And the last one, I think, is something to do with time of the transition. I believe that change brings a lot of disruption to the organization. So the quicker you do, the best it is. Because if you drag too long, you go into a mode that people get tired. I'm doing this, I need to do that, and there is a lot of uncertainty. What's going to happen to the way I'm going to work? By the way, is this tool gonna put my job at risk? So the shorter, the better. Rule of the thumb I learned from some consultant: no more than 12 months. So if any project exceeds the 12 months is where you're going to fatigue and you're going to risk that your change gonna fail. So these are the few things that I would like to say around capability. to make transition into digital. It's not only about the tool, but it's a lot to do with change management. So maybe you can tell me if in the market you have worked, do we have this capability, or do we need to build, or how do you see the current reality today in Nestlé?
So I think, thank you, Luca. I think, yes, I do see that we can make that change. I think maybe that, I spent my last 3 years in the Philippines, leading the demand and supply function there. And I would say that planning has been fundamentally different in those last kind of 2.5 years. Planning is fundamentally different because, we were faced with a situation that wasn't the norm. And like you said, exceptions were happening all around us, not just in planning, but all around us, which was impacting the signals that we had. So it's been fundamentally different, but it's still been such a big requirement. And I think we had to realize in the last 2 years in planning, we had to realize that our role was still fundamentally important, but we just needed to do it differently. We needed to have that agility and that adaptability. And I think because of that, people are hungry for that change. So I think the willingness is there, and the willingness is always the first part, right? So if people are willing, that's the first kind of hurdle to overcome in terms of making that change. And I agree with you. I think that what's important, excuse me, is to look at the skills that are required for that, the skills that are required to really accelerate the use. Thank you very much, Luca, for that. Now, if we're okay, we're going to take a couple of questions that we can see coming through from the audience. So thank you very much to those of you out there for sharing your questions with us already. And we're going to try and cover a few of those in the next few moments. So first one that I'm seeing on here, Luca, is what are the sustainability commitments that we have in supply chain, and how do you think that we can leverage digital to deliver on these?
Thank you, Katie, and thank you for the audience for the overwhelming response of all these questions that you're asking. I see that sustainability, it's really one of the most popular questions in the list. We have, as you know, the Nestlé Group has made bold commitments on sustainability. The one that probably is more widely known to the audience would be the net zero commitment, net zero carbon commitment by 2050. But there are others commitment. We have made commitment around the use of plastics, around the usage of water, around also the responsible sourcing across our entire value chain. So maybe I can give you a couple of examples of how we can leverage digital to deliver our commitments. Maybe I give you a true story that when we started to do this, we decided as a group to make the net zero commitment for 2050. At the beginning, honestly, we had absolutely no clue how we're going to track it, because it sounds, it's aspirational, of course, but the first question is, how do you capture the emission and you track it, and then it has to be done in an auditable way, because we are making a public commitment, so anyone should be able to audit us and say, okay, this is where you started with your carbon emission, where you are now, and now you're progressing. So if you think of the scale of the total Nestlé Group, then we are everywhere in the world. We have a huge number of operations everywhere, so it's not that straightforward. So the first step was really to build a digital solution that can help us. And this is, I'm very proud of our IT team who has managed to do it in record time. So now we have a tool, as a customized tool, where we can capture majority of our emissions that are coming from agriculture, from logistics, from manufacturing, and we can basically have visibility by market or where these emissions are coming from and the progress that we are doing. So we start capturing data at supply level, and then it goes down up to delivery. So that was the first example I can give you how we are leveraging digital to deliver our sustainability. It's about measurement, because if you do not have a solid, has to be consistent, of course, has to be common across all markets, then you are not credible. And I think we have built this in record time, and we already started using it. The second example, I think I've mentioned around sustainability, the importance of our responsible sourcing. So the example I can give you is the use of satellites to monitor the deforestation. So if we say that we are committed to buy products that do not harm the forest, we need to make sure that the supplier from whom we buy do not buy from suppliers or farmers that are actually cutting the forest. And to do this, one great way of doing it is the use of the satellite images. So we can track back from what we buy if the supplier and the farms have touched the forest or not. So this is another example. Another example, third and last example, so we have maybe more time to answer some other question. It's around logistics. And this is a bit, we go a little bit far conceptually, but I think it's an interesting example. Today, unlike Europe or US, in our zone, the availability of electric vehicle or hydrogen trucks is relatively limited. So we do not have much, I would say. So a way to reduce emission in transport, the best way for us at the moment, and again, this may change in 10 years from now, but I'm talking about now, is to optimize trucks. What I mean is to fill the trucks, fill the container, because the more things we can put inside a truck, the less truck are on the road, so therefore the less emission we can account for. And to do this, we are using digital. We are using digital tool to optimize our trucks. So to say, okay, how can I combine orders? How I can stack the product in a better way in order to improve my truck utilization. And this will involve also engaging customer to do it together. Because of course, depending on how the order are given to us, there are certain limits to where we can optimize order together. So it can be a cross industry collaboration that can help us to fill the truck, fill the container, leveraging digital tool to reduce emission.
Okay, thank you, Luca. Look, I know that we're running quite tight on time, but there's one more question on here which is very different, so I want to take the chance to ask you, and it's a more personal question. So based on your experience, what behavior do you think is a key feature of a successful leader?
Look, there are, I think, no secret recipe here, but there are probably a couple of ingredients that can be linked to successful career. The first one I always mention is to do jobs that you like, because when you like something, you put something called passion on it, and if you are passionate about it, you will do well, no matter what. So do something that you like, because otherwise, sooner or later, either you will not perform or you will decide to leave the company. So the first element is passion, basically. The second element is having always a winning mindset, be positive, because you can always find the reason why things cannot happen. You can always find reason why the world is against me. There are a lot of elements that are not controllable in your life. So having a positive mindset is to say, okay, what can I do? Look at the controllable, basically. How can I make it happen? And this I've learned in my career many times. Sometimes I've been given targets, objectives, or things to do that at first I say, no way, how the hell are we gonna do this? Then you absorb the news, you get a bit demoralized at the beginning because how the hell am I gonna do this? But then you reflect, you step back, and you think, okay, what if? And you work on your what if scenario. Today I'm here, I have to go there. Backwards. This can happen if we do this, we do this, we do this, rather than thinking of the reason why it cannot happen. So I always say to my team, when people ask you something that sounds difficult, don't say no. Say yes and put in your end the condition that are needed to get there. Because if you say no already, people will believe that you are a negative person. So always be positive. You're gonna get there. And if you think you can get there, you ultimately you will get there, or you will get very close to that. The third element, I would say, is always having bold goals, bold ambition in your life. Because, if you start low and you reach low, you become complacent. You say, okay, I've done it. You don't stretch yourself. If you say, okay, I'm here and I want to go here to the moon, you may not reach the moon again, but you may get you will deliver much more than your original conservative objectives, I would say. Maybe the last one I would say is about be yourself. Don't try to be somebody else, because if you don't be genuine, don't try to fake it. Be transparent, because the moment people see that you are not transparent, you are not saying what needs to be said, then you lose credibility. For me, it's very important that, and if you cannot say, just say you cannot say. Because if you cannot say and you start to build the stories around, and people will understand you. And I think it's more honest to say, I can't tell you, and and these are the reasons why I cannot tell you, rather than try to build stories. So be genuine, be transparent, engage with everybody. Don't burn bridges, in your career, in your life, because once you burn the bridge, it's difficult. This doesn't mean that you need to agree and always be kind with people. No, my boss always say that it's okay to agree to disagree. For me, it's and I understand the concept. To me, I picture it always with tension. I mean, I always say it's good to have tension with your colleagues, with your other function, provided it's a healthy tension. What I mean is that we sometimes have conflict of objectives, we have different views, and we need to express them. Otherwise, we become complacent. And the analogy that I always say is like you are holding a rubber band. Now, if the rubber band is too loose like this, you are complacent. So we are all good friends. Okay, you do this, I do that, and everybody's happy, and we are optimizing the organization. It's good to have keep the rubber band tense. No, both pull for the right reason and remain always in tension. Now, when it becomes unhealthy, is if someone pull it too much, stretch it, what happens that it will snip and will hurt the other finger of the other person. So you need to make sure that remain in tension, but not to pull at the point of having a conflict, because at that point it's better to escalate, talk with the next level and say, okay, how do we solve this, rather than pulling too much. So having always collaboration. The collaboration for me is the essence of success. Cross-functional collaboration. If excellence cannot come from individual function, individual teams, impossible in today's world. Impossible. So no matter what you do, either you are in IT, in digital, in R&D, in a factory, in a distribution center, you need to work as one team, because you will get input and you have to give input to somebody else.
Okay, well, look, thank you very much. I think it's been great to see all the questions coming through. I think that has to be our last question with the time that we've got today. But I just want to say really thank you so very much to you, Luca. That was a very insightful session that you just delivered. And a huge thank you as well to all of you that are joining us and attending this session. I hope that you enjoyed and that you feel inspired by everything that Luca's been able to share with us today. As you've seen, digital acceleration, it plays a big role in supply chain and procurement. And there are endless opportunities to look forward in driving efficiency and quality in everything that we do. And I hope that that's come across through today's session. So don't forget that you can catch the next session, which is where Yves Rossier is going to talk about making logistics future ready through digital technologies. And he's going to, in this session, you can learn about how Nestlé Logistics has transformed itself so that it can be future ready in terms of resilience, agility, sustainability, and efficiency. This is one that you really don't want to miss. So make sure that you go and you click on the links on the chat, and that will take you directly to the next session. Or you can also go back to the agenda page and join the session from there. Don't panic if you missed out on any of our next level sessions, because the recordings will be up soon for your personal recapping. Feel free to share your thoughts on today's Next Level session and tag us in LinkedIn with the hashtag NextLevel2022. Have a great day, everyone, and see you in the next session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you, Katie, for being a great facilitator today. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.